Number 17. Gun-toting banana man. In February 2014, 28-year-old Derek Poe marked the grand reopening of his firearms training center and tactical store in Beaumont, Texas, by hiring someone to stand along a nearby freeway in a banana costume while brandishing a loaded AK-47. The business, Golden Triangle Tactical, had recently changed locations within the Parkdale Mall, and it seemed like a fitting occasion for a walking advertisement. Poe later told local station 12 News that the banana-clad man was carrying the gun across his back with the barrel pointed downward while holding a sign pointing toward the store. The business owner was hoping to attract customers, but instead the display caught the attention of the police. The 18-year-old employee was arrested and charged for violating an ordinance that bans people from soliciting on roadsides. According to news reports, the rifle was loaded with a 50-clip magazine. Just months earlier, Poe was charged with disorderly conduct for walking through the mall with an AR-15 strapped to his back. Customers were understandably alarmed by the sight and dialed 911, even though Poe claimed he had carried his gun through the mall every day for months with no prior issues. When the case finally went to trial 3.5 years later, Poe claimed that he brought the gun to his store to demonstrate the accessories he sold. He said that he didn't mean to alarm anyone, and because the intent wasn't there, Poe's attorney argued that his client didn't break the law. But the prosecutor claimed that Poe did in fact intend to scare people. However, the jury found him not guilty of the charge after deliberating for just 10 minutes. After the verdict was handed down, District Attorney Bob Wortham told the Beaumont Enterprise that he was surprised by the jury's decision. He blamed the outcome of the trial on a lack of evidence and the amount of time that had passed since the incident occurred. While pro-gun advocates hailed the ruling as a victory, Wortham worried that it set the precedent for someone to display a gun in other public places, perhaps a crowded movie theater. They could argue on the same basis that Poe used in his defense, claiming they didn't mean any harm and therefore didn't commit a crime. Number 16. Kyle Mortimer. On Halloween night in 2023, police in Key West, Florida responded to a complaint about a man in a banana costume urinating near a row of porta potties. Officers arrived to find the suspect relieving himself on a sidewalk. Later identified as 20-year-old University of Miami student Kyle Mortimer, the man allegedly fled the moment an officer identified himself and zigzagged to prevent the cops from catching him while ignoring their commands to stop. According to a police report, a pair of pursuing officers quickly caught up with the Massachusetts native, who was accused of resisting as they took him into custody. More specifically, the report states that Mortimer managed to yank his arm free from an officer's grip and that he interlaced his fingers and held them tightly together in an attempt to prevent the cops from handcuffing him. The police managed to get the suspect under control and walked him down to City Hall, where he smiled in his banana costume for his mugshot while being booked on charges of resisting arrest and disorderly conduct. Number 15. Trevian CTI. There has been no shortage of news headlines in recent years about musician Kanye West's outrageous behavior, but his former publicist also appears to have a penchant for acting out in public. In August 2023, 51-year-old Trevian CTI was arrested in Fulton County, Georgia, for allegedly trying to help overturn the 2020 presidential election in Donald Trump's favor nearly 3 years earlier. She was among 19 defendants who are facing charges in connection with the alleged election fraud, which also includes Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani. According to the indictment, CTI was recruited by co-defendant and Black Voices for Trump leader Harrison Floyd to travel from Chicago to Atlanta, where she was tasked with contacting an election worker named Rudy Freeman. Donald Trump had previously accused Freeman of being a professional vote scammer and wrongfully awarding 18,000 votes to Joe Biden. CTI made the trip to Atlanta in January of 2021. She was accused of asking Freeman to falsely confess to voter fraud and threatening to have people come to her house within 2 days if she failed to follow through. Prosecutors also claim that CTI told Freeman she would go to jail for her alleged election meddling. When the allegations against CTI were revealed to the public later that year, a spokesperson for Kanye West clarified that the rapper wasn't affiliated with her at the time of the incident involving Freeman. In a series of Instagram posts, CTI claimed that she visited Freeman to hear her concerns about the case and that the two met at a police station where their conversation was captured on a police body camera. It's unclear whether these claims are true. CTI is charged with influencing witnesses, conspiracy to carry out solicitation of false writings, and statements and violations of Georgia's RICO Act. Shortly after her arrest, she went viral, not only for the crime, but for the ear-to-ear grin she made while having her mugshot taken. In December of 2023, Katy's defense attorneys withdrew from the case for reasons that have not been revealed to the public. 4 out of the 19 defendants have taken plea deals and have agreed to testify, but the cases are ongoing. Number 14, Ashley Hawley. In April 2021, police in Racine, Wisconsin pulled over 53-year-old McCoy Jones, who was wanted on an active arrest warrant for misdemeanor bail jumping and violating a restraining order. The officer opened the driver's side door and instructed the suspect to exit the vehicle while informing him that he was under arrest. But before Jones could even get out of the car, a woman in the passenger seat angrily interjected, saying, "No, he's not." Later identified as 31-year-old Ashley Hawley, she became progressively more upset as officers handcuffed Jones, who seemed confused about why he was under arrest. Still, though, he cooperated with law enforcement's orders. Police body cam footage showed the woman exiting the car, removing her jacket and charging at one of the officers. The cops wrestled Hawley to the ground as she continued shouting angrily and acting combative, despite their repeated orders to stop resisting. When one of the officers tried to place Hawley's hand behind her back, she allegedly bit his hand. She continued to resist even after the officers resorted to some extremely uncomfortable-looking holds in their attempts to get her under control. It took 3 officers to handcuff her, but even after she stopped physically fighting their attempts to subdue her, she continued shouting at them. When one of the cops told another that Hawley had bitten his hand, she could be heard yelling, "Because you wouldn't let me go." At one point during the video, Hawley broke down in tears and called out to Jones, who was being detained nearby. She began yelling at him, claiming that the cops had messed her face up and calling them names, while refusing to provide them with her own name. Hawley's behavior only became more vile when a female police officer arrived to search her. She claimed that she had urinated on herself and told the cop to rub it. She then continued taunting the officer throughout the search. Inside the woman's jacket, police found a needle as well as a crack pipe beneath the passenger seat of the car. Hawley allegedly refused to enter a police vehicle and demanded to speak to a sergeant, and with no obligation to fulfill the demand, the officers forced her into the vehicle and slammed the door shut as she screamed profanity-laden insults. She was charged with felony counts of battery and resisting an officer causing injury, along with misdemeanor counts of disorderly conduct, possession of drug paraphernalia, and resisting. Hawley pleaded guilty to the 2 felonies and the misdemeanor possession charge, and as a result, she was sentenced to 2.5 years of probation. Number 13, Logan Badgley. Part of growing up involves learning that you can't always have your way. A Tennessee man named Logan Badgley apparently missed this lesson, or at least that's how it seemed when he was arrested in October 2016 for allegedly knocking his mom unconscious during an argument. The 22-year-old allegedly stole his mom's debit card after being told that he couldn't borrow it to buy fast food. Badgley's mother told him there was no money in her bank account, but he reportedly took the card anyway and tried using it at a Taco Bell restaurant near their Lakeland, Tennessee home. According to a police report, Badgley was unable to pay for his order with the debit card and returned home angry. He allegedly confronted his mother in their garage and struck her in the head with a hockey stick during the heated argument that ensued, knocking her out cold. Another household member witnessed the incident after overhearing the verbal disagreement and looking inside the garage. Thankfully, by the time police arrived, Badgley's mother had regained consciousness and was able to give officers her account of what had happened. She suffered a laceration to the head, and Badgley was arrested on suspicion of felony aggravated assault. After being taken into custody, he told police that he'd consumed a few drinks and didn't want to give his side of the story. While the outcome of the case is unclear, Badgley posted a crowdfunding page asking for help buying his mother a Christmas gift in 2023, indicating that they had moved past the incident. In his appeal for donations, he explained that his mom was suffering from cancer and that he had to take time off work to get her to and from all her appointments. All things considered, one can only wish the best for the family during their time of hardship. Number 12, Patricia An Isaac. Early one morning in December of 2019, police were called to the Clearwater, Florida home of 27-year-old Patricia An Isaac and her girlfriend of 8 years. The couple had gotten into an argument over chips and infidelity at 1:30 a.m., which turned physical when Isaac allegedly grabbed her girlfriend's throat with both hands. While speaking with police, the 27-year-old victim said she couldn't breathe and that she gasped as soon as Isaac released her grip. According to an arrest report, Isaac admitted to punching the victim and putting her in a headlock. She was arrested on suspicion of felony domestic battery by strangulation and was released on a $5,000 bond while awaiting her next court date. The judge overseeing the case ordered Isaac to have no contact with the victim and wear an ankle bracelet that detects the presence of alcohol in the wearer's system. But it wasn't the accused batterer's first brush with the law over allegations of a violent outburst. 4 years earlier, in 2015, Isaac was convicted of misdemeanor battery for kicking and punching a security guard at a dog racing track. However, the outcome of her more recent case is unclear. Number 11. Benjamin Foder. Better known by the name of his alter ego, Phoenix Jones, 23-year-old mixed martial artist Benjamin Foder became a real-life superhero in 2011 when he intervened in a public assault in Seattle. He arrived at a bar to find his friend being brutally beaten outside in the presence of dozens of witnesses, and not a single bystander had stepped in to help. After his heroic deed, Foder began leading a civilian patrol group called the Rain City Superhero Movement. Dressed in superhero costumes, the self-described Crime Prevention Brigade confronted lawbreakers in the act. Foder and his friends were commended several times over the next few years for stopping criminals in their tracks and restraining them until police arrived. But they also received widespread criticism for their questionable tactics, as a growing number of people accused members of the group of pepper spraying them without cause. In October 2011, a woman called the police and accused the superheroes of pepper spraying her and several other people for no reason. She told officers that she and her friends had just left a nearby nightclub and were dancing and frolicking in the street as they walked to their cars. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, someone sprinted toward the group and discharged the pepper spray. Paramedics treated the woman and 3 others at the scene, and Foder was arrested on suspicion of aggravated assault. According to a police report, footage captured by Foder's associates showed a group gathered outside, but they didn't appear to be fighting. The video showed a woman hitting Foder with her stiletto as the victims chased the vigilantes away. The report stated that police had previously advised Foder to dial 911 when he believed he was witnessing a crime, instead of getting directly involved, but that he'd continue to take matters into his own hands against law enforcement's advice. Foder allegedly claimed that he saw 2 white men fighting, but failed to explain why he pepper sprayed 4 people, including multiple women. After his initial court hearing, he told reporters that he planned to continue fighting crime on his own terms. At the time, Foder's group had already been accused of several other unprovoked pepper spray attacks. The case was eventually dropped, but City Attorney Peter Holmes made it clear that he disapproved of Foder's behavior, describing the young man as no superhero, just a deeply misguided individual. Holmes urged Foder to consult with an attorney if he planned to continue as a vigilante crime fighter, because he was likely to be sued in civil court at some point, at the very least. He then called on lawmakers to ban individuals from carrying more pepper spray than a person would need for self-defense. The superhero movement disbanded in 2014, but Foder has allegedly tried to take the law into his own hands and has been seen patrolling on a handful of occasions in the years since. In early 2020, he was arrested alongside his girlfriend on suspicion of selling MDMA and cocaine to undercover cops. The couple fell under suspicion after police received a tip that Foder was a drug dealer, sparking an investigation that led to the arrests. It's unclear what Foder is currently up to, but he's living a much quieter lifestyle these days. Number 10. Alan Hushka. People sometimes fight over extremely dumb things, especially when they're drunk. This certainly appeared to be the case for Alan Hushka and Brian Haywood, who flagged down a Rock County, Wisconsin deputy along a roadside at 1 a.m. in December of 2019. Hushka was allegedly so intoxicated that he struggled to maintain his balance and had a hard time answering the deputy's questions. He had visible facial injuries, including lacerations and an eye that was swollen shut, and there was blood on his clothing. When asked about his injuries, Hushka said that his friend Haywood had gotten feisty. According to a police report, Haywood also seemed drunk and had what looked like a fresh bruise on his neck. He allegedly told the police that he and Hushka had gotten into a heated argument over the CBS sitcom How I Met Your Mother and exchanged blows while driving. Hushka pulled over during the fistfight, which continued outside the vehicle. Then afterward, the two men began trying to flag down passing cars, catching the deputy's attention. Describing himself as a peacemaker, Haywood said that Hushka kept coming at him, giving him no choice but to strike his friend repeatedly in the face to get the situation under control. The men had attended a Green Bay Packers game the previous afternoon and had continued drinking at a bar afterward. Needless to say, they weren't exactly sober when their disagreement over the sitcom spiraled out of control. When the deputy asked Hushka if he and Haywood had fought over How I Met Your Mother, he allegedly laughed and said, "Yes, we love that show." No other details about the context of the fight were offered in a criminal complaint, which stated that Hushka admitted to driving the vehicle before he and Haywood stopped along the road to finish their fight. With 3 misdemeanor operating while intoxicated charges already on his record, Hushka was charged with a felony-level OWI charge. He was also hit with 2 counts of bail jumping in connection with 2 pending misdemeanor cases stemming from previous arrests. Records show that he pleaded guilty to the OWI charge and was sentenced to 3 years of probation. He also lost his license for 2 years, was required to use an interlocking device on his vehicle for 3 years, and was ordered to complete a substance abuse program. Hushka has been arrested at least twice since then, and most recently pleaded no contest to disorderly conduct in 2023. Number 9. John Mayes. In an unprovoked attack that happened in Tarpon Springs, Florida in early 2023, a Circle K cashier named Edward Riordan was struck in the head with a chocolate egg by a customer for no apparent reason. Police responded to a reported battery in progress at the scene and were told that the altercation began when Riordan went to cash out 27-year-old John Mayes, who was the next person in line. Mayes allegedly refused to let Riordan serve him and went to another employee who handled the transaction. And according to a police report, Mayes whipped the chocolate egg at Riordan after he finished paying for his purchase. Riordan said that when he told Mayes to leave the store, the suspect flew into a rage and jumped behind the counter. The victim accused Mayes of pushing him and striking him in the face. Mayes reportedly admitted to hitting Riordan and was charged with misdemeanor battery. He was booked into the Pinellas County Jail and was later freed on a $1,000 bond pending the outcome of the case. Number 8. Cheryl Hepner. In a shocking act of violence that was captured on camera in 2011, a grandmother was accused of shooting her estranged son-in-law in Tamarack, Florida, amid a child custody dispute between the man and her daughter. Salvatore Molino had anticipated a possible verbal confrontation with 66-year-old Cheryl Hepner when he went to pick his son up for a regularly scheduled overnight visit. Before the exchange, he hit the record button on his iPhone. Molino later told Broward County deputies that when he arrived at the residence, Hepner invited him inside and said that her husband Sheldon wanted to talk to him. When he declined the offer, Hepner pulled out a handgun and shot at him multiple times, striking him in the rib cage and the shoulder. Determined to survive the attack, Molino lunged at Hepner in an attempt to stop her from shooting as he collapsed forward. He managed to wrestle the gun out of the elderly woman's hand and rushed to his car, then fled to safety as he dialed 911. Thankfully, he survived his injuries. Hepner told investigators that Molino was the aggressor and that he'd pointed the gun at her. She claimed that she'd shot Molino in self-defense while trying to wrestle the gun away from him, but the footage captured on the victim's iPhone proved that Hepner was lying and that Molino was telling the truth. In the video, Hepner could be heard telling Molino that her husband was dying and wanted to speak with him. Molino politely said that it wasn't a good time and asked for his son's belongings. Just a moment or two later, 3 gunshots rang out, followed by an agonized scream from Molino, who screamed, "I can't believe you did that. What? Are you crazy? I can't believe you shot me." In addition to the video evidence, the angle of Molino's second gunshot wound proved that he was down on the ground when the bullet struck him in the shoulder, indicating that he was in a vulnerable position and posing no threat to his attacker. During the investigation, detectives learned that the gun jammed while Hepner was shooting and that the malfunction may have saved Molino's life. Based on the evidence, prosecutors concluded that Hepner had planned to kill the victim and tried luring him into her house so there'd be no witnesses to the crime. When Molino refused to go inside, she decided to shoot him anyway, even if it meant doing it outside and risking being seen by her neighbors. Cheryl was charged with attempted murder and pleaded not guilty. Sheldon Hepner died in early 2012, just one day after authorities decided not to charge him as an accessory to the crime. A few months later, Molino accused his estranged wife, Vicky, of knowing about the alleged murder plot ahead of time. He told Good Morning America that Vicky had always been punctual about exchanging their son for regularly scheduled visits, yet she was oddly absent on the day of the shooting. 3 years after the incident, Hepner was convicted of first-degree attempted murder and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. She'll be released in 2026 at the age of 81. Number 7. Alberto de Baros. When 54-year-old Alberto de Baros discovered that his Subway sandwich hadn't been cut in half during a visit to the restaurant one evening in January 2024, he allegedly flew into a rage. Deputies responded to the scene in Stuart, Florida, and spoke with employee Cassandra Pierre-Louis, who said that de Baros became upset with her after finding out that his sandwich was not separated. According to a probable cause affidavit, a brief verbal exchange ensued before de Baros began causing a disruptive scene. Pierre-Louis refused to continue serving the disgruntled customer, prompting de Baros to throw his sub at the employee while making a call on his cell phone. Another worker reportedly witnessed a confrontation, and Pierre-Louis captured video evidence of the offending behavior, along with the suspect's license plate numbers. She informed her manager of the incident and contacted law enforcement with a desire to press charges. Deputies took a complaint from the victim and paid de Baros a visit at his residence. He reportedly admitted to throwing his sub, but claimed that he thought he'd thrown it at the restaurant's counter. After reviewing surveillance footage, a deputy arrested de Baros for misdemeanor battery and took him to the Martin County Jail, where he was held overnight and bonded out the next morning. Number 6. Dawn Meikle. During the pre-dawn hours one morning in December 2015, police in St. Lucie, Florida responded to a domestic battery complaint at the home of 55-year-old Dawn Meikle and her husband Donald. According to a probable cause affidavit, Donald told responding officers that the dispute began when he passed gas in his sleep. Dawn began elbowing him, but he continued to pass gas, so she kicked him out of bed. The situation escalated a short while later after Donald returned to bed and continued to let loose. Dawn allegedly began kicking and elbowing him, prompting Donald to try restraining her. She was accused of scratching her husband across the chest, ripping his t-shirt open, and leaving him with at least 5 visible scratch marks. During questioning, Dawn reportedly admitted that she got physical when Donald ignored her repeated requests to stop passing gas in bed. She got a bloody lip during the fight and said that she sprayed pepper spray to keep Donald out of the bathroom while she was in there dialing 911. In the end, Dawn was arrested on suspicion of battery, but was released on her own recognizance in anticipation of her next court date. Number 5. Herbert Hayden. The atmosphere at a Florida senior citizens center instantly went from calm to chaotic in September of 2016 when a fistfight broke out between 2 elderly gentlemen during a shuffleboard league competition. It began as a verbal altercation between 81-year-old Herbert Hayden and the victim, James Sutton, during the tri-weekly event at the Pinellas Park Senior Center. Hayden was accused of punching Sutton and striking him with a shuffleboard cue toward the end of the competition, leaving a pair of 4-inch-long scratches on the victim's face. A police report failed to go into detail about what caused the disagreement, which ended with Hayden's arrest for misdemeanor battery. The octogenarian pleaded no contest to the charge and was ordered to pay $1,000 in fees, restitution, and fines. Hayden was also banned from contacting Sutton due to a no-contact restraining order, which also prohibited him from going within 500 feet of the victim's home or vehicle. Number 4. Dimitri Johnson. A Tennessee man's impatience at a McDonald's restaurant in Nashville allegedly led to him threatening employees at gunpoint in December of 2014. According to a police report, 21-year-old Dimitri Johnson and 3 female passengers picked up food at the drive-thru and pulled away before noticing that there was a McDouble cheeseburger missing from his order. He returned to the drive-thru and was told to park nearby, close to an employee who promised to bring the McDouble out to his car. After waiting for a few minutes, Johnson allegedly became frustrated and entered the restaurant accompanied by the 3 women who were with him at the time. He was later accused of approaching the counter with a pistol in hand and sliding the rack while demanding his McDouble. His female companions demanded fresh fries and soft drinks, and the 4 suspects left after receiving their food. At the time, Johnson had 2 previous arrests for theft and weapons possession. After the McDonald's incident, authorities issued an arrest warrant for felony aggravated assault and appealed to the public for information on his whereabouts. Records show that he was convicted of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon 6 months later. He then served a 6-year prison sentence and was released in 2020. Number 3. Jamie Elrod. While responding to a domestic disturbance at a home in St. Cloud, Minnesota in December of 2015, police were met by 37-year-old Jamie Elrod and her husband. They immediately noticed that Elrod's husband was missing part of his right ear and that the injury was fresh. While searching the apartment, officers noticed broken dishes and blood in the kitchen. And in the couple's bedroom, they discovered blood spattered on the wall with the missing piece of the husband's ear lying on the floor nearby. The victim told the officers that he and Elrod had argued over a beer. He accused his wife of following him into the bedroom where she went off at him and said that Jamie had been drinking. According to the husband, she had consumed a type of jungle juice known as hairy buffalo, adding that Elrod gets out of hand when she has those. Officers noted in the arrest report that Elrod seemed intoxicated. When they asked her what happened to her husband's ear, she said that she had no idea. At the time, she was already facing a drunk driving charge for an unrelated incident and was arrested on suspicion of felony assault. During jailhouse phone calls to her mother, Elrod allegedly said that she bit her husband's ear when he reached for her during the argument. She confessed to ripping part of his ear off, indicating that she knew a lot more about what had happened than she had admitted to the police. It's unclear whether doctors were able to reattach the severed portion of the victim's ear. Number 2. Danielellis. It's understandably frustrating when a restaurant takes forever to prepare an order for a delivery driver, but a Florida man named Danielellis was accused of taking his frustration to a criminal level in December of 2019. According to a police report, the 43-year-old Grubhub driver became impatient to the point of rage while trying to pick up an order at a Burger King restaurant in Clearwater, Florida. Employees later told law enforcement that Danielellis lost his temper shortly after entering the building. They told him the food wasn't ready, and he allegedly responded by storming out of the restaurant and chucking a 3-foot-high outdoor ashtray at the front door. Danielellis was also accused of striking a male employee in the chest with the ashtray. A 20-year-old female worker said that when she told Danielellis to leave the restaurant, he threw a left hook at her face, leaving her with a visible injury. The suspect was charged with 2 counts of misdemeanor battery and was ordered to stay away from the victims and the Burger King restaurant where the incident occurred. Just 2 months earlier, Danielellis was arrested in connection with a series of road rage incidents, including allegations that he attacked 3 different women's cars. In the first case, he was accused of smashing a woman's rear window with his bare hands. He allegedly jumped on the hood of another car and threw rocks at a 3rd vehicle. The outcomes of his cases are unclear, but state records show that he's not currently serving prison time or on supervised release. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. Number 1. Ernest Ford. It seems like Americans are more divided over politics than ever before, including at least a handful of couples who have made news headlines in recent years over political disagreements that escalated into violence. 62-year-old Ernest Ford of Sarasota, Florida became one of those people in December of 2019 when he was accused of shoving his 60-year-old girlfriend of 7 years to the floor during an argument at their home. The spat between Ford, who harbors conservative sentiments, and his girlfriend, an admitted lifelong Democrat, stemmed from a difference in opinions over then-President Donald Trump's impeachment hearings. Specific details about the fight were absent from court records, but with the way Democrats and Republicans tend to go at it these days, one can only imagine that it didn't take long for the argument to become heated. The victim told responding officers that the disagreement escalated into physical violence when she confronted Ford, who'd retreated to a bedroom. She accused her boyfriend of grabbing her by the shoulders and shoving her to the ground, leaving her with a scraped knee. Ford was booked on a misdemeanor battery charge but was released from custody after posting a $1,000 bond.
Number 8. Kaye Muttart. Kaye Muttart was in her late teens when she began experimenting with methamphetamine in her hometown of Anderson, South Carolina. She tried to quit several times, but the highly addictive and easily accessible drug kept pulling her back in. After injecting meth one evening in 2018, Kaye completely lost touch with reality. She could no longer tell what was real and what wasn't, and she began to hallucinate outside a church. Kaye began to think that the world was ending and believed she could somehow save it if she gouged her eyes out with her bare hands. Members from the nearby church found her screaming on the ground in pain. She was so high, it took several grown men to subdue her. Paramedics gave Kaye a tranquilizer and flew her to a hospital, where she stayed for several weeks. She was left permanently blind and had no choice but to adjust to it. In addition to receiving treatment for her physical injuries, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She finally started receiving care for the issues that had most likely caused her to self-medicate with street drugs in the first place. After returning home, Kaye began learning how to read Braille. By 2020, she had mastered a handful of basic tasks like cooking, caring for pets, and doing laundry. That same year, she received prosthetic eyes that gave her the confidence to feel like herself again. At that time, Kaye was focused on finishing her high school diploma, but she also became a vocal advocate for discouraging young people from abusing street drugs. She even found love, proving that it's possible to carry on even in the face of unthinkable adversity. Number 7. Jacqueline AIDS. A number of years ago, Jacqueline AIDS from Maricopa County, Arizona, signed up for a dating website for people seeking wealthy partners. She met with a man who wasn't interested in a second date, but she refused to take no for an answer and began to stalk him relentlessly. Over the next 10 months, AIDS sent the victim over 159,000 text messages. One day in 2017, she showed up uninvited at his house and was escorted off the property by police. However, she continued to escalate her behavior. In addition to messaging the man non-stop, her correspondence took an increasingly gruesome and sadistic tone. AIDS told the man that she wanted to wear his flesh, devour his organs, and make sushi from his kidneys and chopsticks from his hand bones. She took things to a disturbing new level in 2018 when she broke into the victim's house while he was out of the country. The man spotted AIDS on his home surveillance footage and called the police, who discovered her inside taking a bath as if she lived there. They also found a butcher knife in the front seat of her car. After missing multiple court dates for criminal charges related to her stalking and other bizarre behavior, AIDS was held at the Maricopa County Jail. During a press conference, she told reporters that she believed a jury would find her innocent and would want her victim to marry her. She also rejected a plea deal that would have brought the case to a much quicker end. As the interview went on, her behavior became even more strange. AIDS began to make completely outlandish claims, including that Walt Disney had abducted her as a child and that she was a member of the Illuminati. She was ultimately deemed incompetent to stand trial. Several court-appointed psychiatrists deemed the woman's mental health as unrestorable, and her case was dismissed. In many instances, a person accused of a crime would see this as a better outcome than facing a jury, but AIDS insisted on having her case heard. That never happened, and she was sent to a mental health facility with plans for her parents to move her to Florida to live with them. At the very least, it got her away from her victim and ensured that she would receive continued supervision from people with her best interests at heart. Number 6. Matthew Williams. 34-year-old Matthew Williams was a violent convict who had been released from prison just weeks earlier when he went on a massive drunk binge in South Wales in 2014. Shortly after meeting a young woman named Karis Yam at a pub, he took her to his friend's house, where he drank alcohol, smoked cannabis, and injected a strong amphetamine called mephedrone, known on the streets as MCAT or Meow Meow. A little while later, Williams claimed he was hearing voices and said that everything looked like a negative photograph. After leaving the friend's house, Williams took Yem to the hotel he was living in with plans to call her a cab from there, but he convinced her to go to his room with him. He wasn't supposed to have female guests based on the conditions of his prison release, but nobody was supervising him closely enough to catch him breaking the rules. During the early morning hours, staff members heard a woman screaming. They rushed into the room to find Williams eating Yem's face in a mannerism they later described as Hannibal Lecter style. They called the police, and the first officer to arrive on scene found Williams crouched over his victim. He still appeared to be eating her face and refused to comply with the officer's orders, so she used a stun gun to subdue him. Yem was obviously murdered, and Williams died shortly after being taken into custody for reasons that remain unclear. A forensic examiner found no evidence that Williams actually ate his victim, but Yem was covered in horrific injuries. The murder left the young woman's grief-stricken loved ones outraged, wondering why Williams had been released from prison with no medication, mental health treatment, or any oversight whatsoever when he was a repeat offender with a disturbing track record. Many believe that if he had been properly supervised, Yem might still be alive today. Number 5. Charlene Thompson. In 2018, an argument broke out at the home of 61-year-old Cincinnati resident Charlene Thompson, and as a result, a woman wound up hospitalized with severe burns to her back and arm. Thompson allegedly poured hot grease on the victim during the disagreement and held her at knife point before allowing her to leave. Authorities charged Thompson with assault, and at the time, she was also wanted on 2 outstanding warrants stemming from unrelated incidents. Thompson already had a lengthy criminal record that included several prior assault cases. At her arraignment, her lawyer said that she struggled with mental health issues and had been treated for paranoid schizophrenia in the past. A neighbor told local station WLWT that Thompson was a good woman, but that she had likely stopped taking her medication and flipped out. The acquaintance also said that the suspect had tried pouring hot grease on someone else during an argument about a year earlier. Thompson's friend described the situation as reflective of her need for better sustained treatment. The judge initially held the troubled woman on a $50,000 bond, but what happened after that is a mystery. Number 4. Christopher Plaskin. In 2014, Connecticut high school student Christopher Plaskin snapped and stabbed Marin Sanchez to death after she turned down the classmate's prom proposal. The young man willingly gave himself up to police when they arrived at the scene, stating, "I did it. Just arrest me." While Plaskin awaited the murder trial from behind bars, he wrote his father a letter claiming that he killed Sanchez because he heard voices telling him to do so. His defense attorneys considered entering an insanity plea on his behalf before he decided to plead no contest in 2016. He was ultimately sentenced to 25 years in prison. In a civil lawsuit, the victim's parents accused the school district of failing to take proper action. Apparently, their daughter told guidance counselors months before her murder that Plaskin was threatening to take his own life. He was suspended for a week and continued to self-harm after he returned, perhaps because he needed mental help rather than punishment. The lawsuit alleges that Plaskin's need for intervention was obvious and that he committed acts of self-harm in public. Sadly, the signs were missed, and his behavior escalated to the point where one life has been taken and another has been ruined. In 2021, Plaskin sued the prison system for denying him adequate medical care for a stomach ailment. Unfortunately, judging by the apparent difficulty of accessing basic physical care, it's safe to assume that he's not receiving sufficient mental health treatment. Number 3. Robin Ford. In 2013, 51-year-old Robin Ford was working as a substitute teacher at an elementary school in Deltona, Florida, when she suddenly began rambling about the FBI and the CIA. She also reportedly said that she planned to call the US president on the phone, but instead called the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. A deputy came to the school to speak with Ford, who claimed that she could hear people yelling and cursing outside the classroom. She said that she couldn't see anyone, but that she could hear them, and the voices prompted her to call the sheriff for help. Ford underwent further questioning and said that she had called the CIA and the FBI in the past because she believed drug dealers were following her around and swearing at her. The voices also made her believe that someone was trying to steal her identity. A security guard at the school told the responding deputy that Ford had accused her of using her walkie-talkie to broadcast the voices. Just to be sure that nothing actually happened, the school's principal spoke with the students, who said that they didn't hear any altercations or concerning noises. When authorities challenged Ford's reality and suggested that she may need mental help, she denied having any mental issues and insisted that things like this have happened to her in the past, She said that she had also called the sheriff's office on prior occasions to report her concerns, but the agency found no records of her doing so. Ford became very upset that nobody believed her and argued that she had personally spoken with the President of the United States about the strange things going on in her life. She said that the people responsible for the voices had followed her from Florida to Georgia. Needless to say, she was permanently removed from the school. After law enforcement determined that she posed no dangers to herself or others, they called her a cab and sent her on her way. Number 2. Alexis. On September 16, 2013, 34-year-old Alexis entered the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. with a loaded gun and opened fire. By the time police killed him in a shootout an hour later, he had fatally shot 12 people and injured several others. Alexis was a military veteran and a computer technician who had been contracted by the government to work at the Navy Yard. Prior to the massacre, none of his co-workers noticed any signs that he might be planning to do something violent. The only mishap he experienced at the job was a performance issue that was addressed weeks earlier. He bought a Remington shotgun and the hacksaw he used to shorten the barrel the following day. In the wake of the shooting, the FBI revealed that Alexis was plagued by delusions that the government was controlling him with low-frequency radio waves. A search of his devices revealed that he was convinced the mind control had been going on for 3 months. As he descended further into madness, he started to believe that the waves were being transmitted through the hotel ceiling to cause insomnia. Before committing the horrific act of violence, Alexis etched the words, "End the torment," into the barrel of his gun. He entered the Navy Yard planning to die that day, and wrote in one of his computer files that he had accepted this fate. Alexis had sought treatment at the VA for sleeplessness, but nobody thought to screen his mental health. In a heartfelt statement, Alexis's mother said that she doesn't know why her son did what he did, and that she'll never be able to ask him why. She went on to say that Aaron is now in a place where he can no longer do harm to anyone, and for that, I am glad. Number 1. Barbara Arano. In March 2016, police in Santa Fe, New Mexico noticed a speeding vehicle blowing through red lights and flying past other cars. Officers pursued the driver, sparking a chase that ended only when the Toyota RAV4 crashed into a pickup truck. A naked woman got out of the vehicle and ran around screaming until officers subdued her and covered her with a tarp. As they handcuffed the suspect, she started yelling, "Jehovah, Jehovah." She also kept trying to spit on the cops, forcing them to put a mask over her face. The suspect was identified as 51-year-old Barbara Arano. When the police asked her why she was naked, she replied, "I got hot." She also allegedly said that she had been partying like a damn dog and admitted to drinking whiskey and using pills, as well as taking heroin. Arano was charged with driving under the influence, aggravated fleeing of law enforcement officer, reckless driving, and battery of a peace officer. When she got to jail, she allegedly asked for more drugs and alcohol. She was released a few days later on a $10,000 bond, but the outcome of the case remains unclear.
Would you rather be forced to work directly alongside a co-worker you can't stand on a regular basis, or live on the same street as an ex you haven't gotten over and their new partner who shows off the relationship at every possible opportunity? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.